My mom sponsored a needy student online. She not only paid for her education, but also let her live in my room, wear my pajamas, and use my cosmetics. The girl, in tears, promised my mom, "Auntie, I'll take care of you when you're old." Later, my mom used up her retirement savings to send her to study abroad. I disagreed, and the girl retaliated by pushing me into the water, leading to my death. Then I woke up, reborn at the time my mom first sponsored her. The girl pleaded, "Auntie, please look at my messages. I really need your help." I sneered, took the phone and said, "Mom, we should sponsor truly needy students, not online moochers." My mom's a bit gullible. A few days ago, she posted online about wanting to help needy kids, and now her inbox is flooded. Requests for sponsorship, stories of making it into prestigious schools, and cries for help flooded the messages. I laughed while scrolling through, until a message from a user named Jane caught my eye. Found her, finally. Jane's message read, "Auntie, I know it's not right to bother you, but I'm a poor student with 5 siblings, and my dad won't pay for my school. I only message to tell you that you're kind-hearted and good people have good fates." Such sincerity, such kindness. If only I didn't know her true colors. My mom walked in. "Mary, did you take my phone?" Seeing me looking through the messages, she anxiously explained, "I just want to help some kids who can't afford school." I deleted Jane's message, blocked her, and calmly gave the phone back. It's a good thing, but real needy kids can't even afford a phone to go online. Too many scammers online. We should check in person. My mom was delighted. "You're right. I didn't expect you to support me." I sighed inwardly. If I didn't support her now, we'd be wiped out later. Yes, I'm reborn. In my previous life, when my mom divorced my dad, I was in my teens. I didn't understand why she insisted on the divorce, or why she nagged me constantly. We barely spoke, growing distant. Later, my mom had some kind of breakdown, started posting online, and helping many students. Jane was one of them. Mom fell for their sob stories, not only paying tuition and living expenses, but also buying tablets and branded clothes. Some asked for money to buy expensive Apple phones for gaming. Others found $3,000 a month insufficient. Disheartened, she cut ties with most but kept supporting Jane. Jane, grateful, purposely took college entrance exams in our city, while I went to an out-of-state university just to get away. During a summer trip with friends, I returned home to find Jane living in my room. She greeted me meekly, "Hi, sis," wearing my pajamas, sleeping in my bed, using my cosmetics. I was stunned and asked Mom what was going on. Mom said, "Jane had nowhere for the summer, so I let her use your room. You can share." I was furious. Why should I share? And why is she wearing my pajamas? Jane, teary-eyed, clutched my sleeve. "Don't be mad, sis. I'll take them off right away. Don't upset Auntie. She's a good person." The more hysterical I got, the more my mom felt for Jane. She looked at me, saddened. "Can you be considerate?" Wow, the odd one out is me, apparently. Mom treated Jane like her own daughter, calling her second daughter to everyone. My place in her heart was gradually taken by Jane, who no longer looked like a needy student. Her skin glowed with health, and you'd think she was raised in luxury. I repeatedly asked Mom to make her leave, but she would always say, "Jane is pitiful. She's like your sister." Every time I saw them bonding like a mother and daughter, I felt out of place. In later semesters, I opted for school trips and internships to avoid going home, as Jane made herself quite at home. Mom seemed to slowly forget about me, pouring her love into this new daughter. I graduated and went home to pack, only to find Jane packing too. Mom was sending her abroad for studies, at great expense. Seriously, sponsoring goes that far now? Jane smiled apologetically while arranging her hair. "Don't worry, sis. I'll bring you gifts from the UK." I was stunned. While I worked part-time through college, Jane flaunted expensive shopping hauls online with bags costing thousands. I studied hard for grad school, while Jane used my mom's savings for UK tuition. Who's supposed to be the needy one here? I called all my relatives to confront Mom once they found out. They criticized her, saying, "Are you out of your mind? She's not even your real daughter." I faced Jane. "We didn't treat you badly. What hold do you have over her?" Jane stayed silent, crying as if we wronged her. Unexpectedly, Mom shielded Jane, pushed me away, saying, Jane said you're useless and won't care for me when I'm old. I'd rather raise Jane. I was dumbfounded. You think Jane will care for you like her family? Mom, what's going on? My mom went totally nuts. You don't have to worry anymore. I've already gone to the notary public with Jane. From now on, she's my daughter. Let's just end our mother-daughter relationship. Pack your stuff and leave today. I looked at my mom in disbelief. It was just supposed to be sponsoring a poor student. How did things get to this point? That night, I walked alone on the river bridge, dragging my suitcase. I couldn't stop thinking about my mom's crazy face and Jane's smug expression. My mind was a jumbled mess. Suddenly, someone shoved me from behind. I lost my balance and fell off the bridge. I didn't even see who pushed me, just heard a familiar voice. She said, "Sister, don't worry, I'll live your life well for you." Cold river water filled my senses, wetting my limbs. I struggled, but no one noticed me. Right before dying, my life flashed before my eyes, like a movie reel. It showed when I was a toddler learning to walk, and my mom encouraged me with Osmondus candy while helping me take steps. How did it come to this? I don't know how long had passed before I suddenly woke up from a haze. I opened my eyes, finding myself in bed, and there was my mom with breakfast, urging me to get up. I had traveled back in time, back to 5 years ago, before my mom decided to sponsor Jane. I told my mom about online scam stories. She promised, hand on heart, not to sponsor anyone online. Only then did I feel relieved. I agreed to accompany her on weekends to really visit places that need help. My mom got emotional. "Mary, I'm so happy you're talking to me so much. It's been a while." I felt guilty and held her hand. "I'll talk to you more, Mom. I know you've been having a tough time after the divorce." Her eyes turned red and she turned away to secretly wipe her tears. In the past, my lack of communication with my mom gave others the opportunity to exploit us. When I realized the value of family, it was too late. Even blood ties couldn't fix the years of disconnect. I kept my promise, spending weekends taking my mom to a poor county. We ended up sponsoring a little girl who had lost her parents and lived with her grandma. The girl and her grandma earned a living by selling eggs at the market, though they had just one old hen left, barely able to lay eggs. Yet when they saw guests, the girl offered us her only remaining bread and watched us from behind the door. After understanding her situation, I told my mom, "This is who really needs help." My mom nodded, and we became the girl's sponsors. On our way back, I finally asked my mom why she was so determined to help poor kids. She replied softly, "Because when I was a child, someone sponsored me so I could go to school. Your grandma had 4 kids. There was no way for all of us to get an education. Without a kind soul's help, I would have never left the countryside. I've wanted to do this for so long. Your dad wouldn't let me, but after the divorce, I can finally do what I want." So that was why. I sighed. I used to respond to my mom's behavior with misunderstanding and resistance. Never cared to understand why she insisted on it. Life moved on, and with our help, the child started elementary school and sent us thank you letters with crooked handwriting. I finished high school smoothly, and my relationship with my mom improved. She began to smile again. I thought everything from my past life was over, and that Jane wouldn't disrupt our lives again. But reality hit me hard again. One summer day after graduation, I came home to a strange feeling. "Sister, you're back." At the entrance, I saw Jane sitting in our living room, standing up nervously. Jane, how could it be her? Didn't I delete her post? I even blocked her. How is she back? I recalled her arrogance in my past life, making my mom feel like a stranger in her own house. My voice shook as I asked, "Mom, who is she?" My mom sighed. "I met her on my way home. Her parents abandoned her, and she couldn't go back. She begged for help, and it was raining, so I brought her home." This doesn't make sense. Never mind Jane's story about her parents abandoning her. We don't even live in the same state. Jane looked pitifully at me, bowing repeatedly. "Sister, I'm sorry for bothering you. I'll leave as soon as it stops raining." My mom, bless her heart, got anxious. "Why rush? It's raining." A flash of triumph crossed Jane's eyes. At that moment, I finally understood. There was no coincidence. Jane came to my mom on purpose. Only one explanation made sense. She traveled through time too. Glancing at the downpour outside, my mom said, "Listen to your aunt. Wait until the rain stops. Jane teared up. Thank you, Auntie. It's been a long time since anyone treated me this kindly. I steadied myself. She had deliberately approached us, but I'd face it calmly. I confronted Jane. You're not from around here. How'd you wander to our place? Need help going to the police? Jane's eyes shifted, and suddenly, she dropped to her knees, bypassing me to kneel in front of my mom. Auntie, I'm sorry, I lied. I wasn't actually abandoned. I ran away myself. I got into college, but my parents wouldn't pay, because they value boys over girls. They're only sending my brothers to school. I don't want to end up marrying young and having kids. If I go back, I'll be beaten to death. Pretend I didn't come here. I'll leave right now. She started to stand up, ready to leave, but my mom anxiously stopped her. I know my mom was reminded of her own past, because the family situation Jane described was just like my mom's childhood. Every word hit home for my mom. Jane leaned her head on my mom's shoulder and started crying. Mom, with tears in her eyes, turned to me and said, Mary, you see this? I pulled her aside and said, Mom, first, we've already been supporting another girl. Second, she ran away from home. If you let her stay because you feel sorry, how long do you plan to keep her? A night or a few days? What if her parents come looking for her? Or what if she's lying? Have you thought about all of this? Mom nodded and said, You're right. I just feel sorry for her. If she goes out, she'll get caught in the rain and be hungry. Sending her back means getting beaten again. Jane slowly approached us, bowed deeply to my mom, and said, Auntie, don't worry. I only came out to earn my own tuition and won't cause trouble for you and my sister. Seems like Jane wants to stick around with us for sure. I calmly said, I believe you're someone who can take care of herself. But first, let's eat. Can you cook? Come help me make dinner. Jane widened her eyes, but there's a housekeeper. Before she could finish, she stopped herself. My mom looked at her suspiciously. Our housekeeper is on leave this month. How did you know we have one? Jane tried to play it off. Because your neighborhood is so nice. I saw that most homes have housekeepers. Sorry, Auntie. Mom seemed a bit displeased. You observe well, but we haven't always had a housekeeper. Suddenly, I clapped my hands. Hey, I have a great idea. Wait for me. 15 minutes later, I returned from my bedroom with 2 paper documents and laid them out on the table. Mom looked puzzled. Mary, what's this? I smiled. Mom, you're right. Jane is really pitiful. We should help her. Mom was surprised, but I gave her a knowing glance. Jane, thrilled, asked, Really? I can stay? I nodded and pushed the contracts in front of her. Looking at my mom, I said, Jane is 18 now, of legal age to work. Since our housekeeper is on leave, we can hire Jane as our temporary housekeeper. Her pay will be room and board. You've had health issues this year, so she can help with chores. When she's free, she can find other work to earn her tuition. It's a win-win. Mom frowned at the contracts, but soon relaxed with a smile. Why didn't I think of that? It's a great idea. Jane's tuition is covered this way. It's no trouble for us. Jane was stunned, staring at the contracts. Feigning confusion, I asked, What? You have nowhere to go right now. Do you think the terms aren't good enough? Mom held Jane's hand. Mary is offering a fair wage. At least you'll be settled for now. Jane forced a smile. No, I'm happy. Thank you for thinking of me, sister. The word sister sounded like she was gritting her teeth. I smiled back slightly. You're welcome. I led Jane to the kitchen, showing her where the basic utensils were. Once inside, I shut the door. Jane's expression shifted instantly. Mary, do you think you can control me with a contract? So you came back too. I crossed my arms, watching her furious face. I should have realized something was off. Why hadn't your mom read my messages? Why didn't she reply? It was you playing tricks, right? What did you do? I coldly replied, You're really stubborn. Like a dog chasing what doesn't belong to you. Jane angrily retorted, You're only slightly more fortunate, because of your rich mom. I earned everything myself, and it's mine. I was about to go to England and start a new life there. I don't know why I'm back here again. I slowly guided her, because you killed someone. Jane stared at me, a slight smile spreading. I don't know what you're talking about. She flipped her hair. Your accidental drowning has nothing to do with me, right? Okay, let me help you remember. With that, I grabbed her from behind and dunked her head into the vegetable-filled sink. She struggled fiercely, but I didn't let go until she broke free. Feel familiar? Remember the past now. Water dripped from her hair, cabbage leaves stuck on her, as she stared at me, terrified. Are you trying to kill me? Then Mom's voice called out, what's going on? Jane, upon hearing what seemed like her savior, was about to play victim when I shoved a rag in her mouth. I called back, nothing, Mom. The fish was just hard to handle and splashed some water. Jane spat out the rag, retching at its dirtiness, but she laughed suddenly. You'll never escape me. I'll replace you in this life too. I calmly reminded her, don't forget what I just said. Know your place. You came to us. If you want to play, I'll play right along. By the time Jane served the food, she had fixed her appearance. Her slightly red eyes gave her a pitiful look, like a little rabbit. Despite her worn clothes, Jane has good natural looks. With her innocent round face and fair skin, even her lies are somehow believable. Mom noticed her expression. Are you okay? Not feeling well. Jane glanced at me and smiled. Nothing, Auntie. The onions got to me. She knew there wasn't an emotional bond with my mom yet. Whatever she said, Mom wouldn't believe. After dinner, Jane tidied up the dishes, casually asking, Auntie, where do I sleep tonight? My mom slapped her forehead and said, oh no, I totally forgot about this. Why don't you stay in the maid's room? Jane's face changed. Isn't it wrong to stay in someone else's room? The maid's room we're talking about is a tiny space by the balcony. The maid usually doesn't live there, it's more for storage. Jane's face turned grim. Got it. After making sure my mom was settled, I took Jane to that little room. Jane questioned, how is anyone supposed to sleep here? The room could fit someone, but it was small, way smaller than my room. I asked back, so where do you think you should sleep? My room. Jane hesitated for a moment. I whispered, or just like the past, should I give you my bed and go sleep on the streets? Jane replied quietly, don't get cocky. I only signed a contract, not a slave deal. What can you do to me? I sneered, yeah, you can totally tear up the contract and leave my house. Then you won't have to deal with this. With that, I left Jane standing there and went back to my room. I locked the door, slapped on a nice face mask, and turned up the music, because only that little storage room wasn't soundproof. Since she's in my house now, I wasn't going to let her have a good time for a single minute. The next morning, I lazily got out of bed. Mom was already sitting in the kitchen. She quickly waved at me and said, look at Jane. She got up early and cooked us a nice breakfast. And look at you, always sleeping in. Jane wiped her hands on her apron and walked to my mom. They say poor kids grow up quickly. You helped me, it's the least I can do. Mom lovingly patted Jane's head, and Jane placed a fancy breakfast in front of me. Sis, I made this special breakfast just for you. My mom urged, try Jane's cooking. Yeah, like she'd make me breakfast out of the goodness of her heart. I coughed, interrupting my mom. Mom, I think I caught a cold last night. I'm feeling sick and can't eat anything. Mom quickly touched my forehead. You do feel warm. Don't eat then. I'll get you some meds. Jane looked hurt. I got up at 4 in the morning to make this for you. I smiled. That's really kind of you. We shouldn't waste it. You should have it. Jane stood there frozen with the plate. Just as I thought, she tampered with this special breakfast. I continued, you're the one who worked hard. You should eat it. We feel bad making you work since you came to our house. My mom nodded in agreement. Yeah, where do we find such hard-working kids nowadays? I'll go get Mary some medicine while you eat, Jane. Under our watch, Jane had no choice but to reluctantly eat the breakfast. Soon after, she broke out in a sweat and ran to the bathroom to throw up. My mom worried, is something wrong with the ingredients? Why are both of you sick today? I assured her, Jane might still be getting used to the environment, that's all. When Jane came out of the bathroom, Mom gave her a bowl of soup. Jane weakly said, thank you, Auntie. I'm sorry for the trouble. Then she took a big gulp and immediately spit it out. What is this, Auntie? Mom kindly said, it's water with incense ashes. Mary said it's an old remedy for getting used to a new place. In the last life, I threw up after eating something wrong, and Jane convinced my mom to give me a bowl of this incense ash water, making me sicker. Jane glared at me. I feigned concern. You should drink it if you're not feeling well. Old remedies work. With my mom's hopeful eyes on her, Jane reluctantly drank the whole bowl of incense ash water with a grimace. Jane went back to her room to rest. I quietly followed, peering through a crack in the door. I saw her take out a doll with needles stuck in it, muttering my name as she stabbed it. I recorded the whole thing and left quietly. I've noticed that my mom hasn't been herself lately, huge dark circles under her eyes. I asked her, "Are you not sleeping well? How about I make you some calming tea at night?" She sighed, "Sure, but for some reason, I've been dreaming about Jane a lot lately." I grew concerned. "What have you been dreaming about, Mom?" "I dreamt she was always with me when you weren't home. I called you but we argued, and I nearly passed out from high blood pressure. Luckily, Jane was there, telling me she's my daughter, and that I should trust her to take care of me." I went silent. Those dreams mirrored past events. Jane had brainwashed and hypnotized my mom, filling her head with thoughts that Jane was her daughter. Over time, my mom believed it. And what did I do? Nothing. I ignored, kept silent, and let misunderstandings grow. I argued with Mom because of Jane and drove us both crazy. Mom pinched my cheek. "What are you thinking about? I have my own daughter. Like I'd let anyone else care for me. Just been too busy lately, I guess." Days later, my mom rushed home from the office in a panic. I asked what happened. She didn't answer, just started frantically searching for something. She looked at me and asked, "Mary, have you seen my file folder from the drawer?" I froze, realizing history was repeating itself. I shook my head. "No, I haven't seen it." Mom was stressed. "It's my company's bidding plan. Today, your dad's company submitted a similar one. Looks like I'm getting pushed out of a project. Someone definitely leaked it." Just then, Jane appeared from her room, still sleepy-eyed. My mom looked at me seriously and said, "Mary, be honest with me. Have you seen your dad recently?" I looked down and stayed silent, not denying it. Jane hesitated and then said, "Auntie, the other day I saw Mary get into a black car, but I didn't see clearly if it was Uncle's car." That totally crushed my mom. She trembled and said, "Mary, why did you lie to me? Don't you know why I divorced your dad? He's got a mistress, yet you're still helping him." Jane quickly grabbed some tissues and handed them to my mom, soothing her. "Auntie, don't be upset. It's my fault for speaking out of turn. Even if Mary made a mistake, she probably didn't mean to. Please don't be angry." I pulled out my phone from my pocket, opened a recording file, and played it. My dad's voice came from the phone. "Mary, this time I asked you out for 2 reasons. One is to celebrate your birthday again, and the other is to see if you could bring me the document from home. It's mine, and I forgot to take it. If you say this, I'm not eating. What else do you have left at home? Your conscience. If you really want to mess with my mom, just say it. Mary, your dad and I really want to make it up to you. Once my company is back on track, I'd like you to come live with us. Dad, I'm an adult now. I needed you when you were with another woman. Mom raised me, and now you want to take care of me. It's disgusting. How dare you talk like that?" After the recording finished, my mom's tears dried up. She turned to me, puzzled, and asked, "Mary, what's really going on?" I calmly handed her a glass of warm water and said, "I did meet Dad for a meal, but I recorded the whole thing. I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want you to get mad thinking about that jerk." Mom looked confused. "What about the documents?" I looked at Jane and smiled. "Who went into the house and took those documents? Maybe we should ask the property manager." Jane's face turned pale instantly. In my previous life, Jane saw my dad pick me up too. He wanted me to get something for him, using the excuse of having a meal with me. I refused and thought that was the end of it. Days later, Mom sternly asked if I had met with Dad. Our relationship had already soured because of Jane, so I simply said I did and walked out, ignoring her shocked face. My last glance was at Jane's smug expression. Mom never mentioned it again, but after that, things got worse between me and her. She focused all her attention on Jane instead. Later, I learned the document had been taken, and Jane made it seem like Dad asked me to steal it. That incident became the final straw for Mom. She couldn't believe I'd hurt her to that extent for Dad and his mistress. Jane behaved so obediently, so Mom gradually gave up on me. But how did Dad actually get the documents, and why was I blamed? That's something to ask Jane. Stealing such a critical file was no small matter. My mom contacted the management office, and soon we got a copy of the corridor CCTV. The footage clearly showed Jane letting my dad into the house, where he got the documents. Mom was shocked. I gave a cold smirk and asked Jane, Why didn't you mention letting my dad in? Mom looked at Jane. Her face turned crimson as she stuttered. I didn't realize. He said he was Maris' dad, so I let him in. Mom was furious. At least call and let me know. How could you keep quiet about it? Jane's eyes teared up. I didn't know he was there to take files. I replied calmly, a stranger rummaging through our living room, and you even tied it up afterward. Are you sure you didn't know? Seeing Jane crying her heart out, my mom sighed. You should leave. I'll settle your wages. Panicking, Jane cried, pulling my mom's sleeve. Auntie, I'm sorry. I'm just a girl from the countryside. I didn't mean anything bad. Please give me another chance, Auntie. My mom was firm. Finally, I spoke up. Let it be, Mom. Things are as they are, and why blame an outsider? Let her stay for 2 weeks. She has nowhere else to go. Jane looked at me in disbelief. With some excuse, I sent Jane away. I asked my mom, Mom, did you do what I mentioned about having 2 plans for the design project? I had predicted Jane wouldn't miss a chance to sow discord between me and Mom again, so I warned her in advance. Mom nodded. Thanks to your heads up. Otherwise your dad would have succeeded. I won't let him get away with it. But how did you know everything? I thought about it and decided now wasn't the right time to explain everything to Mom. I said, let's put that aside for now. What I want you to know, Mom, is that you didn't do anything wrong in your marriage with Dad. He was the one who cheated, and I could never side with him. I didn't understand before. I didn't get why, in my senior year, you wouldn't even pretend for my sake. Pretending through senior year before dropping the bomb after exams. But now I get it. I have no right to judge you. You have your choices and your life. Hearing that, my mom's eyes turned red, and she lowered her head, sobbing quietly. I'm sorry, Mary, I really am. I did want to wait until after your exams. I didn't want to affect you. But when your father brought that woman to our home, into our bed, I just couldn't take it anymore. I know I let you down, but I just couldn't. My mom's head was resting on my shoulder, and she was sobbing uncontrollably. I held her tightly, feeling her tremble as she said through tears, I held it in. I put up with it. Since you were in middle school, every time he cheated, I kept quiet, but he can't insult me like this. I couldn't tell you before. I was scared you'd ignore me. I'm so happy you're willing to talk to me now. I had no idea. Had I known before, I would've. Mom, why didn't you tell me earlier? She just kept crying silently. I suddenly understood. It was a marriage she felt she failed in. She didn't want me to see her broken, so she endured. What did I do before? I didn't understand her. I ignored her. I thought that as a mom, she should just cope with it herself. But she's human, too. She couldn't handle it all. That's why she wanted to fulfill childhood wishes and connect with others. She helped those kids and felt valued when she got a thank you note. Jane filled that void for her, giving her the love she needed. But that was my job. I hugged my mom tight, and let her cry it out in my arms. I whispered softly, Mom, you've done amazing. I'll always have your back. After that misunderstanding, my mom lost trust in Jane. Jane, being sharp, noticed. She didn't act out, doing her chores quietly. But I knew her well. She wouldn't walk against the wind. She's like a hunter, waiting for her next chance. And I could give it to her. Soon, our high school reunion was coming up. In the living room, I loudly discussed it with my mom, mentioning some rich classmates. Jane overheard and came out of her room, quietly asking, Sis, I've only really met you and Auntie since coming here. Mind taking me? I pretended to be annoyed. You're not in my class. Wouldn't it be awkward? My mom said, Jane's in college here now. She could use the connections. If anything comes up, they can help each other. I reluctantly agreed, rolling my eyes at Jane. She smirked, satisfied. Before we left, Jane complained she had nothing nice to wear. So, my mom let her pick something from my closet. Jane went straight for my priciest white dress. I watched without stopping her. She smiled, Sis, this won't flatter your skin tone, but it'd suit my fair skin better. Before I was reborn, Jane always had something to say about what my mom bought for me. Sis, this dress doesn't suit thick legs like yours. This makeup is better for fair skin like mine or Auntie's. I usually fought back, and my mom would side with her. This time, I just watched Jane wearing my dress, using my makeup, transforming herself. She admired herself, murmuring, This is how I should look. Yeah, every girl has the right to be beautiful, but not by taking what isn't theirs. I took Jane to the reunion. Confident, she introduced herself as my sister, becoming the center of attention with her striking appearance. She soon connected with my friends, chatting about pop culture and fashion like she knew it all. By the event's end, she'd added most of my classmates on social media. I just watched her little show with amusement. As we left, a classmate named Jack offered us a ride. I didn't drink tonight. I can drop you two home. Jack's one of those rich kids I mentioned to Mom. He seemed quiet, but was known for getting into fights, handling issues with money. No one dared to mess with him, except Jane, who'd made a point to sit next to him, drink in hand. I declined Jack's offer. Jane clearly wasn't happy, but told Jack, "Don't worry, Jack. I'll message you when I get home safe." Well, she's quick. As her sister, I'll help her out. I smiled. Maybe you can give Jane a ride. I've got plans. I'll head back later. Jane's eyes lit up at that. Since then, Jane's been going out often. She told Mom she found a part-time job, but she didn't. She was hanging out with my classmates, especially the wealthy kids. My best friend pulled me aside, warning me about Jane's rumors and lies. "Doesn't it bother you that she's spreading crap about you?" my friend asked, outraged. "Not really. Lies don't become truth, after all. And I heard she's dating Jack, going out at night and posting about it. Haven't you seen?" Probably blocked me from seeing it. My best friend bit her straw and said angrily, "Having a sister like that is just exhausting. She's definitely going to Jack's birthday party, isn't she?" "Jack's having a birthday." "Yeah, but he's only inviting classmates he's close with. I heard it's gonna be at his fancy house. I've heard his villa is really something." I couldn't really focus on what my friend was saying, but I was sure that Jane would give me a big surprise that day. On Jack's birthday, I told my mom we were visiting relatives, leaving Jane at home. My mom repeatedly reminded her, "Jane, don't open the door for strangers." Jane laughed. "Don't worry, Auntie." I dragged my mom to a cafe. "What are you showing me?" she asked. After we had 2 cups of coffee, I figured it was time and took out my phone. I had a surveillance app. After I lost some documents last time, I secretly installed cameras at home. Right then, the feed showed Jane's every move. Of course, Jane couldn't resist Jack's birthday. Full face, she'd definitely dress up. Sure enough, once we left, she ran into my room, using my makeup and perfume freely. That perfume was a gift from my aunt in France, one I didn't even touch. My mom sighed, "Just let her use the makeup. Maybe it's a new experience for her. We can understand that." I shook my head. "Let's keep watching." Jane finished her makeup and went straight to my mom's room. She easily grabbed my mom's diamond necklace and put it on. My mom loved collecting jewelry. Jane picked one she liked and stuffed it into the bag she brought from home. She knew how often my mom wore different pieces and picked one that wouldn't be missed. My mom couldn't believe her eyes. "No wonder I've been missing some jewelry lately. I thought I was just too busy and misplaced them. I didn't know it was her." After picking the jewelry, Jane rummaged through my mom's designer bags, trying them on and checking herself out in the mirror, pleased with herself. She picked the priciest bag, tied it up, and happily went on her date. But that wasn't all. I also showed my mom an audio clip of Jane cursing me with Voodoo. Fear filled my mom's eyes. Why would Jane do this? I smirked, because she's not as simple as she seems. "Remember when you posted for donations on that website? Jane was the one bombarding you with messages, asking for help." My mom thought hard, then her eyes widened. "Are you saying Jane came here specifically, knowing my info, for a purpose? But how'd she even get my information, and why do this?" It was finally time to explain everything. I took a deep breath. "Mom, would you like to hear a story?" After I finished telling my story, my mom was silent for a long time. I thought she didn't believe me and tentatively called, "Mom." Unexpectedly, she hugged me tight. "I'm sorry, Mary. I'm so sorry." I patted her shoulder. "I'm the one who should apologize, Mom. It's all in the past now." As soon as I finished speaking, my mom decisively picked up her phone to make a call. I quickly stopped her. "If you confront her now, you'll expose it all." My mom was furious. "What is there to confront? With someone like this, you should just call the police." After calling the police, They quickly gathered the evidence I provided and soon brought Jane from Jack's birthday party to the station. Jane was wearing my mom's necklace, holding my bag, looking panicked. The police asked her what was going on, and Jane's eyes immediately turned red. She looked at us. "Auntie, it's a misunderstanding. I'm just a girl who loves beauty, you know. Why call the police?" My mom replied coolly, "If you don't tell me when you take my things, how is that different from stealing?" Jane's eyes widened in disbelief. "How can you say that, Auntie? I'm Jane. Isn't using your stuff normal for me?" My mom held me close and firmly said, "Why would it be normal? It's normal for my daughter, but you're not my daughter." Jane fell silent, biting her lip, glaring at my mom. The officer said, "I've seen your signed agreement. Legally, you're just an employee. We've handled many cases like this, like maids stealing from their employers. Often, they try to establish ties. I suggest you come clean." Jane quickly told the officer, "I'm being framed. They are setting me up." I calmly replied, "Everything you did was caught on camera, not just this time. We've got evidence from before too. How is this a setup? I never forced you to do any of it. Didn't you choose this path yourself?" Jane walked up to me, giving a cold smile. "You've really changed in this new life. But so have I. Even without you two, someone will take care of me. I'll still go to the UK. What's mine is mine. My life won't be worse than yours." Jane took out her phone and made a call. Shortly after, Jack arrived at the police station. After understanding the situation, he found my mom and me and, without expression, offered to compensate 10 times the items Jane took, promising she'd move out of my house tonight, hoping for a settlement. I looked at my mom, who approached Jane. "We can settle this, but I hope you realize, vanity is not a good trait. One day you'll learn that what you earn through your own efforts is the most genuine." Jane just rolled her eyes at my mom, ignoring her. My mom signed the settlement. Jane whispered to me, "This life I've realized, replacing you is boring. It's more fun to step over you." I softly replied, "Here's my last piece of advice. Stay away from Jack. He's beyond what you can handle. You might not end up in a rich family, but rather in hell." Jane chuckled and threw her arms around Jack, giving him a kiss. Jack asked, "What did she say to you?" Jane playfully replied, "Oh, it was just a few barks, darling. Now we can be together forever." Jack said nothing, but he gently patted her head with a blank expression. Then Jane got into Jack's car. I watched her shadow fade away, and let out a sigh. Jane disappeared from my life from then on. My mom and I cleaned up the messy house, and everything went back to the way it was, as if Jane had never been there. The only updates I got about her were bits from classmates. Jane didn't attend the university she got into. She followed Jack to the city where his college was. She outright gave up school, trying to marry Jack and fulfill her dream of wealth. It was a worse decision than her past life. Strangely, from time to time, classmates receive midnight messages from Jane, saying, "Help me." When someone called back, Jack always answered, saying they just had a minor spat. But since Jane had lied before, no one took it seriously. However, I'm the only one who knows this time she wasn't lying, because Jack has a natural violent streak, prone to antisocial behavior. I found this out during high school from teachers gossiping in the office. It runs in the family. Most of the men have this issue. Jack's been in fights since he was a kid, not stopping even when bloody. His cousin used to abuse animals and set their classroom on fire. But thanks to their wealth, they managed to cover things up. One teacher sighed, "I've heard with the right education and parental guidance, someone like Jack could change. How is it this bad?" Another replied, "Regular parents struggle to raise kids well. How could anyone guide a child who needs more patience and love? Pity whoever marries into that family." Jane thought she was marrying into high society, yet had no clue she was walking into a lion's den. She was exactly the kind of vulnerable, alone girl Jack preys on. To feed his inner beast, Jane would inevitably be toyed with by Jack. I'd warned her repeatedly. My mom also offered plenty of chances. It was ultimately her choice. All I can do is respect others' destinies. Freeing myself from it all, I occasionally took trips with my mom. Even after starting school in another city, I often called her. We shared our thoughts because I knew she needed my company. Maybe my past life was a lesson from above. I'd grown up quite a lot unknowingly. Later, Mom told me about a dream she had. She dreamt she loved Jane more and neglected me, sending Jane abroad, but I then fell into a river on my way home, causing her unbearable pain. She realized I was her priority, so she constantly prayed to bring me back, visiting temples until her head bruised. Listening to her dream, I said nothing, just rested my head on her shoulder. After returning from our trip, we found a basket of eggs and a letter on the doorstep. The letter came from a poor student my mom used to support. She wrote in youthful handwriting about her grades. Her grandma bought a hen, and with everyone's help, life gradually improved. At the end of her letter, she wrote, "Thank you, aunt and sister. I'll work hard in my studies to see the bigger world." Yes, work with your hands and see more of the world. Side note, in my junior year of college, a video hit the internet overnight. It showed a drunk guy beating up a passerby. That passerby turned out to be the son of a top corporate CEO, causing uproar online. Through the blur, I suspected the attacker was Jack. Hesitant, my phone buzzed with class group chats. That guy was Jack, they confirmed. Although Jack's family had money locally, his victim's family was way more powerful. They hired top lawyers, determined to put Jack behind bars without settling for any compensation. They even audited the Jack family's business, exposing many issues. Overnight, Jack's family lost everything and went bankrupt. A classmate sighed in the group, predicting Jack's imprisonment for at least 8 years. After a long silence, someone said, "I saw Jane recently. She got kicked out by Jack's family, with a broken leg, blamed for everything. Jane brought it on herself, didn't she?" After that, no one saw Jack or Jane again. The year I graduated, my mom retired. She wanted to move to my city to be with me more. While moving, we went through stuff to throw out. In the pile of waste paper, 2 yellowed sheets fell out, Jane's old contract. I sighed, putting it back in. Soon, a recycling lady on a tricycle came by. Under the scorching sun, she carried a bag, wearing a straw hat, her clothes soaked with sweat. Lame, she limped over. Taking a towel off her neck to wipe her face, she said, "Sorry for the wait, it's pretty hot." Her voice was familiar. As she raised her head, it was unmistakably Jane. She no longer had the fair skin she once did. Her hands were calloused, and her right leg couldn't stand straight. When she recognized me and my mom, her face turned bright red in an instant. My mom looked shocked. She turned around, went back into the house, and returned with a bottle of cold water, handing it to Jane. "It's hot, have some water." Jane didn't take the water. She stared at us intensely. "You forced me away back then, and now you're pretending to be nice. Let me tell you, you're the real culprits in my life." The cold water fell to the ground. I bent down, picked it up, and placed it back in my mom's hand. "Mom, have you forgotten? Let go of the savior complex. Respect other people's lives. She got where she is on her own. We did nothing wrong, and there's nothing we can do." Jane's eyes welled up with tears as she glanced at a yellowed contract. "It shouldn't have been this way. I could have gone to study in the UK. I said softly, "From the moment you signed that contract, you've been choosing your own path. But I think you're stronger now than when you relied on Jack. At least you're earning money with your own hands. Take these scraps with you. We need to leave here. I doubt we'll meet again." Trading lives, making transitions. It seemed like Jane had achieved that dream, but sadly, dreams are fragile. In the end, it turned into a nightmare. The end.